The value of your estate for the purpose of inheritance tax includes your savings, possessions including property, pension funds. Certain payments from payment funds may be subject to inheritance tax, subject to certain exemptions, the value of any money or property you gave away during the 7 years prior to death. The first £325,000 of your estate is tax-free, so the 40% tax only applies to anything that goes over this value. The current inheritance tax threshold is £325,000. This is also known as the nil rate band. If your estate is worth more than £325,000, you may have to pay 40% on everything over the nil rate band. The last thing you want is for all your hard-earned assets that you want to leave to your loved ones to be dented by a huge inheritance tax bill. Here are 5 ways you can pay less inheritance tax. Give gifts while you're still alive. One way to reduce your inheritance tax bill is to give gifts while you're still alive. However, it's important that the gift is given outright, otherwise it could fail for tax purposes. If, for example, you transfer a property to your children but continue to live there and benefit from it, the gift wouldn't qualify for exemption. If you're considering giving any large gifts, it's important to seek advice from a professional to make sure you're getting the most from the allowances you are allowed. Leave money to charity in your will. Here's an example. If you leave an estate worth £350,000 and include a charitable gift of £30,000, no inheritance tax would be due. This is because your total taxable estate value would be calculated as £320,000, £350,000 minus £30,000, and therefore below the £325,000 inheritance tax allowance. You can also reduce your inheritance tax rate by leaving more than 10% of your net estate to charity. This will reduce your inheritance tax rate from 40% to 36%. By being smart about how you give to charity, you can maximize the efficiency of your estate to benefit a charity close to your heart. Write pensions and life insurance policies in trust. Pensions and life insurance policies can be good ways of minimizing your tax bill. With either of these, the policies may need to be written in trust. This usually means that any payouts will not form part of your estate but will instead go straight to your beneficiaries without being counted towards inheritance tax. Leave everything to your partner. If you're married or in a civil partnership and your partner is resident in the UK, you don't have to pay inheritance tax on anything you leave to them regardless of the size of your estate. Married couples and civil partners are also able to pass on their unused tax allowance to their partner, which can massively increase the surviving partner's tax allowance. Here's an example. When writing a will, Sarah decides to leave her whole £500,000 estate to her husband, John, which means there is no inheritance tax due on her estate. As Jane didn't use any of her £325,000 inheritance tax allowance, this passes on to John. John's inheritance tax allowance is now £650,000. When John dies, he shares his £700,000 estate between his nieces and nephews. This is £50,000 over his inheritance tax allowance, so the amount of inheritance tax due is £20,000. Leave the house to your children. In April 2017, the government introduced an additional tax allowance on top of the nil rate band. This gives homeowners an extra £175,000 tax allowance if they leave their home to their children, stepchildren or grandchildren, or their spouses or civil partners. Like the nil rate band, it's important to understand this extra tax allowance before writing a will, as it may impact who you decide to leave your estate to. This allowance is also transferable between married partners and couples in civil partnerships, which can increase the tax allowance for the surviving partner. We won't bore you with more examples and calculations. These are best left to professionals who are passionate about helping people keep as much of their estate as possible. So, whether you already have a will or would like to get the process started, we are here to help. Take advantage of our £100 coupon towards our will writing service or just ask for our free will review service if you already have a will.